So Brian, I'll let you introduce yourself, spell your name and your title, and then you'll give a statement and we'll take some questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, Brian Hlavasek, B-R-I-A-N, last name Hlavasek, H-L-A-V-A-C-E-K, Environmental Health Director, Tri-County Health Department. And just real quickly, we are certainly aware of the video of the capacity issues at the Grizzly Rose over the weekend. The owner of the Grizzly Rose did reach out to us early this morning to alert us to that issue and indicate that he was temporarily closing until I guess he can figure out how best to operate under these conditions. So that's what transpired today and kind of where we're at.
So Brian, you want to tell us about what any other next steps there would be in a common situation like this?
Yeah, in generally speaking, our compliance and enforcement process involves attempts to achieve voluntary compliance through education and technical assistance, followed by warning notices, followed by potential cease and desist orders or orders to close if we cannot achieve compliance. And so given this situation, we're currently evaluating our next steps in our enforcement process, which could be either a cease and desist or order to close, depending on how we determine internally.
Okay. And then also I know that we've been looking at their square footage and the capacity. So you want to tell us a little bit about what their capacity limits would be?
So in terms of capacity right now under level orange, they are all restaurants, including the Grizzly Rose, is required to adhere to 25% capacity or 50 people, whichever is fewer. So in a venue that size, as of right now, they're limited to 50 people. That could change if we go to yellow, but that's currently what the capacity restrictions are.
Cool. Okay. Let's just go ahead and open it up to questions. I'll just go on my list to call people if they like. Anybody from KWGN?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
I'm with Fox 31. You can we can do other questions.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question right now?
I guess my question is, can you tell me more specifically what you guys have run into with the Grizzly Rose in the past and whether or not you've had any enforcement problems before, or is this all new to you, the video we've seen and the complaints that you've heard?
Yeah, previously in the past, so back in the fall, it was complaints of capacity and lack of mask wearing. And at the time, we were working proactively and with the owner, who was being cooperative, to try to gain voluntary compliance and working on signage and those types of things. And I'd add that the social distancing was certainly part of that, as you might imagine, with the dance floor and live band. So we were working with them on strategies to comply. We were not getting compliance. We did issue a warning notice back in October. And then following that, he subsequently decided to temporarily close for the winter and just recently reopened.
Okay, John Ewing.
Hi, yeah, I think you said that the Grizzly Rose voluntarily closed today. Is that what I heard?
Correct.
What I mean, you said you've had issues with them in the past. That was clearly more than 50 people. It was probably closer to at least 500 from the video I saw. What was that conversation like? But I mean, you said voluntarily closed for how long? Was there an understanding that it'd be a couple of weeks, a month, etc.?
Yeah, and I didn't speak to him directly. Spoke to one of my staff. But generally speaking, my understanding is at least he was voluntarily closing for the next weekend, potentially longer. But it was left a little bit open. And so we're currently, again, evaluating our next steps in our enforcement process.
And when they said voluntary closed, they're only open on Friday and Saturdays. That they're not open midweek.
Currently, they're open, I believe, between 6 and 11 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays.
Friday and Saturdays.
So I think
that
he
gives-
indicated that at least for the next weekend or so that he was going to temporarily close. But that's as far as it's gotten the conversation.
Okay. Gabby, questions? Okay. Audra Streetman, do you have any questions? Okay. Tori Mason, looks like you're next.
I'm coming. Okay,
Okay.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Have you had any other venues or even restaurants in Adams County that have had as many issues as the Grizzly Rose has?
Off the top of my head, probably not. I can think of one other that we were working with pretty proactively that had a number of complaints. Is the Mile High Flea Market was one that we were working with that, you know, you might imagine might have a lot of capacity, and I think we got that under control with them. But I think that's what comes to mind.
And I understand that this is supposed to be about, you know, enforcement is more of an educational tool, but how many strikes can a place get before they actually have to close?
Yeah, I mean, generally our process involves, again, sort of the compliance assistance piece, which you know, it could be a number of calls. It could be just, you know, and how proactively and how cooperatively are they working. But once we get to a warning situation, you know, we would theoretically move pretty quickly on any continued non-compliance, because that really means that whatever is happening is not working. And so, again, it's usually as much voluntary compliance as we can try to get before we move to warnings and then finally potential orders.
Thank you.
Looks like Sean Towell.
Yes, as you discuss going forward with them, and what do you got to be looking into to kind of determine all the processes, what you may levy against them as you do your investigation?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly we look at the egregious nature of what it is we're dealing with. You know, in past history, you know, how cooperative they've been. So all of these things sort of factor in. And again, we have some options in working on our next steps to, you know, whether it's a cease and desist or potential order to close.
Cool. I think I've gotten everybody. Anybody else have any additional questions? Looks like
Can I
Feel
ask
free.
the one follow really quick?
Okay.
You know, I know you said they're closing voluntarily for at least the next weekend. I mean, we're already getting comments on our Facebook everywhere saying, you know, some people are celebrating what they did over the weekend. They're celebrating it as a thumb your nose to the system kind of thing. What would you say to the people out there saying, you know, their punishment is voluntarily closing for a weekend? I mean, this is a very, you said the word egregious. I mean, it clearly is. This is a clear, you know, telling the state, telling the county where they can shove it over this essentially.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I think this is a very egregious, and I'm just telling you what he proactively called and said, I'm voluntarily closing. So that doesn't mean that's where we're going to leave it. Again, we're discussing internally, you know, what are our next best steps, but that's just what transpired this morning is him calling saying, I'm going to voluntarily close for the time being.
Right. So voluntary
Can I have,
punishment.
what would be those next possible steps? I mean, what's the range of things that you guys could do?
Yeah, the range of things could be a cease and desist order, which basically states you are required, you're ordered to comply. Doesn't necessarily close them. We could issue an order to close until such time as we determine that you can operate in compliance, followed by a potential court action. We could seek a temporary restraining order in court and have a judge order them to comply or close. Those are the general next steps.
Have you heard anything from the state? Sorry to jump on anyone else. Have you heard anything else from the state? You know, we saw the state revoke liquor licenses in Weld County and other, you know, operations. Have you heard anything from them? Is that an option of revoking the liquor license as a penalty or something along those lines?
Have not heard from the state, or the Department of Revenue is the one that revokes those liquor licenses. So I can't speak to them if they've been in there this weekend or not. But certainly that would be an option for them if they were to, you know, get documentation and proceed down that path.
Great. Any other questions? Feel free to jump in. Okay. Thank you, everyone. It seems like we've got the questions answered. If there's any follow-up questions, be sure to go ahead and email me, and I'll see what I can help you guys with. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.